Good morning, Mark of the Wicked Edge Expert Corner. We're talking about whetstones. Okay, my first whetstones that I used with Wicked Edge, when I first started using Wicked Edge, at that time, Tom Blodgett of Genda, was in some sort of a collaboration or association with Wicked Edge, that Tom was using his sharpening knowledge and his knowledge of sharpening stones, and he was cutting the sharpening stones, backing them with backing plates, and he was mounting them on Wicked Edge style paddles. And when you start cutting stones, if you want to make them yourself, and you can make them yourself, it's not rocket science. You have to, let me just show you, you have to have a Wicked Edge handle, and you have to get a whetstone, and the whetstone you have to cut, and then you have to back it, and when you cut it, you have to lap it to smooth it and get it square, and then it has to be affixed to the handle. So you have to decide what stones to use and how to pair them, then you have to label them. So it is work intensive to end up with something that looks professional. So we look to buy these. I looked to buy these from reputable people. And when I started in 2015, 2016, Tom Blodgett of Genda was one of the only people that was cutting whetstones and mounting them on Wicked Edge paddles. At that time, I was able to shop the Genda stones at the Wicked Edge website. Later on, they took care of their business separately, so I was able to buy these from a gentleman out west, Bob Nash, Oldowan Sharpening Supplies, and he was working with Tom Blodgett of Genda, and he offered, as did Tom, Shapton glass stones at the time that were still available, unbacked, no glass backing. So they were Shapton stones that could be cut and backed for Wicked Edge. And he also worked with original Chaucera stones, Chosera, Nanoa original Chaucera stones. They were cut to size, backed, and mounted on paddles. Different whetstones work differently. Like I said, some soak, some splash and go. This Chaucera is maybe a little more muddy than this Shapton glass. The Shapton glass is maybe a little better cutting stone. This one maybe has a little better polishing attributes. Those different characteristics are what we pick and choose when we're sharpening knives and we're looking for different finishes. Also, some steels cut better with one abrasive than the other. Hence, the variety of stones. Now, I choose, because of my market, the U.S. market, I shop places like Sharpening Supply because they have the Chaucera line, they have the Nanoa line. I shop where they have the Suhera line. The brand names that are familiar to me in the USA that I can research at different sharpening places and get each person's take on it, because the specs from one place and the specs from another place may be different, but when you start reading the different specs, the accumulation of that data that you collected gives you a better idea of what you're working with. So I like to buy American whetstones because I can look them up. Genda is in Taiwan. So he is essentially in the Western Hemisphere, where his market is different. He is able to get whetstones that are traditional whetstones, old brand, old stock, old original products. We get the stuff that's manufactured and marketed for the US, so sometimes they're different. So because of the differences, he may offer, and Constantine at Gritomatic may offer selections that are different than the stuff that I was able to research and become familiar with. So I look to work with guys that would cut the stones for me that I would buy from the catalog stores. I would commission them. I would buy them all of the handles and all of the backing plate material and the stones I wanted to use and have them drop shipped to them. And they cut and made stones for me. Now, some of these are made by a guy that I found on eBay named Rainbow Sharpening Stones. I had heard through a forum that there was a guy that was cutting stones and mounting them on wicked edge paddles, and I pursued it and I found him, and he made not all of these, but he made some of these. Some of them are from Aldewan, from Bob Nash. I believe Bob Nash did get his cut stones from Genda. I don't believe Bob cut his own stones. I do believe he worked in association with Tom Blodgett, to the best of my knowledge. Gritomatic, Constantine, I'm not sure what he's doing. I'm sure it's a similar thing, that he has a deal with Nanawa and Chaucera, or he buys that domestic, that Japanese sharpening stone from the domestic market, and he imports them and then cuts them and backs them and mounts them the same way. So he offers them too. But the thing is that what we look up, when we do a Google search and we look up online, what we find is what is in our market. I'm Googling in the USA, so I'm saying US domestic market information, and some of their stuff is old traditional, old stock, imported, so there may be some differences. Because of that, I look in this country to buy the stuff that I'm familiar with. Anyway, it could go on and on and on. So I have amassed a collection of whetstones that I am trying to associate the abrasive, the grit, the way the stone wears with the steel that it matches best with. That's my excuse. That's my excuse to buy knives of different steels, so I can play with them with whetstones to try to say which one matches best. I'm sharpening pretty good, but I'm not getting that far with that challenge of matching one with the other, because too many other fun stuff gets in the way. But I just want to give you an idea. Here's a Shapton Pro Stone. It's a Kuramaka Pro Stone. When these stones are getting made, if you guys want to make your own stone, you got to figure out how to take that big stone and cut it into these planks efficiently, because the different whetstones are shaped differently. Some of them are the right thickness. For instance, the wicked edge is 3/4 of an inch wide, or 20 millimeters. A 20 millimeter thick whetstone slices, cut the length, matches this up. So different whetstones of different sizes cut more efficiently for you guys that are looking to do it yourself. Some of the whetstones are very, very expensive. I'll give you an example. This whetstone is a Shapton glass stone original stock. This is 30K, 30,000 grit. This side is 16,000 grit. When you get into these and you start buying and cutting these, one of these stones could be a couple $100 for the full stone. So when you start cutting them and backing them, you could have, in a pair of stones, you could have a couple $100. So it gets expensive because you're buying a whetstone and you're cutting it and using it again. So not only are you paying for the whetstone, but then you're paying for the labor and you're changing it, and then you're paying for the handle and all that stuff. So whetstones can get expensive. They're imported. There's not a lot of experience between people using them because it is like that, an enigma. That's the thing that we see the old Japanese guys and, you know, using their free stones, freehand, and we associate the whetstones with them. Now I'm trying to use those same whetstones in a guided sharpening system. So not only is it the challenge of the process of sharpening it, but there's the challenge of knowing the innuendos of that whetstone. This is a splash and go Shapton, Shapton. Here's another splash and go, but this is a soapstone. So how you address it and how you use it, the sharpening is the same, but the stone is different. Then these stones need to be maintained, and we're going to stop here and go to another video and talk about maintaining.